Welcome to a brand new edition of It's All Relative. I'm Josh, and today I'm joined by a special guest who is courageously coming to share her story about her battle against breast cancer. We'll hear about the physical and emotional effects she faced, the plans and steps that were decided when she found out, and how she can use her current situation to help spread more awareness about this horrendous disease. And yes, to all the male listeners, this does affect you as well. So It's All Relative family, you already know what to do. Turn it up and let's get it rolling with an all new episode right here on the It's All Relative podcast. I hope everyone is having a good and safe holiday season. This most likely will be the last show of 2022. I want to quickly thank everyone who's supported the show over the last year. I do promise I will be back in 2023. Quickly, if you have supported the show or if you do support the show, please leave a quick review on Apple. That really helps the show out. But let me jump right into today's show. Joining me today, someone who, if you're familiar with the show, you should recognize immediately. Thanks for coming back, Angela Galente.
Thanks for having me back.
How have you been?
I've been pretty good.
Good. Anything new you want to share since the last time you've been on?
Not really. I celebrated a birthday. My child turned 11, so that was exciting.
Happy birthday.
And other than that, we're same.
Did you end up going to the restaurant that you were talking about? The birthday dinner?
I did.
Okay. How'd it go?
It was okay. It was good. I was a little disappointed in the steak, if I'm being honest, but
okay. That's why we don't have to mention the place, but you can talk to us. Why? What was wrong with it?
It's just a little fatty, and it wasn't as flavorful as I was. I don't know. I think I anticipated it too much.
Okay.
I think I just built it up, and then got disappointed.
All right. What about Christmas? Christmas is approaching quickly. I think it's a week away. You ready?
I am going to start my shopping tonight, I hope.
Good job.
So, last minute.
Yeah, one of those, huh? You got your tree up?
Yeah, put my tree up the day after Thanksgiving.
Cool. Decorations?
Yep.
All right, cool. All right, well, let me get today's guest on. She's a fighter, a survivor, a courageous woman kicking breast cancer's ass one day at a time. Ladies and gentlemen, Elisa Parker.
Great to be with you.
Yes. Thank you for giving me some of your time and agreeing to come on the show. You know, when people go through certain hardships in life, many shy away from talking about them. So for you, Elisa, I think it's a very honorable decision, and I'm grateful you've decided to share your story with us here on the It's All Relative podcast. So, as detailed as you'd like to get, talk to us. Start from the beginning. Tell us and the listeners about when you found out that you were diagnosed with breast cancer.
Well, first of all, thank you for your interest. I know that this is something that affects a lot of people, and so I hope that my story is something that a lot of people can relate to and maybe find comfort in, hopefully. So my first diagnosis was a few months after I turned 40, which was almost 4 years ago. And it wasn't exactly a surprise because both my maternal grandmother and my mother were diagnosed with breast cancer and both died of breast cancer at young ages. So it was always something that was hanging over my head. And I had been getting my routine mammograms and ultrasounds. So I did find that there was some comfort in having that, early detection, which in the end is why I think I'm still here. So with the first diagnosis, I was diagnosed with what's called DCIS, which is it's an acronym for ductal carcinoma in situ, which is considered stage 0, essentially. So it's not invasive cancer, but it's the beginning stages of cancer. And there are these small little pockets that are discovered, and they can easily be removed. through surgery, which is what happened with me. And I had them removed, and then I went and had radiation for a month, which was, something I had to commit to for every weekday, that is, for a month. And then I went on a hormone treatment regime for, I was told, would be a couple of years. And, it was somewhat traumatic, just getting that news, but also not a total surprise.
Right.
And kind of, didn't think about it for a while until my next diagnosis, which was a little more aggressive. And that was this past March, the beginning of April. Actually, it was April Fool's Day, come to think of it, which was kind of ironic, right?
Right.
And then in that case, I had an actual tumor, and it was in the other breast. So the first diagnosis was on the right side, and the second was in the left side. And that was quite frightening, but I think, again, not totally surprising. Mm-hmm. And that's when I made the decision that I had to be a lot more aggressive about the treatment. And so that's been, my journey the last couple of months, going through surgery and chemo. And now I'm on a kind of endocrine therapy, which blocks the production of estrogen, because I'm estrogen positive cancer is what I'm dealing with. And then, here on after, I'm, essentially going through early menopause as a result of the medication. And I will start my reconstructive therapy in a couple of weeks, where they essentially put me back together. Mm-hmm. As best as possible. Wow.
I mean, I do want to state quickly that, I'm not too familiar with this whole, with breast cancer and whatnot. So a lot of this is new to me, and I'm learning as well. So, some of these questions may be obvious, to some, but, like I said, we're all gonna learn a little something today. But you had said that the reason that you had gotten checked was because of prior knowledge that you kind of knew, right?
Right.
Pending
correct.
doom, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you explain some of the emotions that you were feeling the first time that you were told that you had breast cancer?
That's a great question. I think because I was sort of anticipating it might be something I'd have to deal with because of my mother's and my grandmother's experience. It wasn't a complete surprise. So I wouldn't say I was surprised. It was terrifying for sure. I was really scared. And simultaneously I just found myself being so grateful because I had and I continue to have this incredible support network, my family, my friends, my boyfriend, people in my life who just really stood by my side and continued to remind me how courageous I am. And also I'm very lucky to live in this time when there are so many options for people who have this scary diagnosis. And that certainly wasn't the case, 30 years ago. Right.
Well, a quick shout out to your whole support system, because that is super important. And I'm sure, like you had mentioned or said, it helps, so shout out to all of them. Now you mentioned that your mother and your grandmother, how did this, you went through this whole process with them, correct? So, or no, or yes?
Well, sort of. My grandmother died before I was born.
Okay.
And my mother died when I was 8 years old.
Oh, okay.
So, yes, I went through it, but, from the perspective of a little kid.
8-year-old. Yeah. Got you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, she was diagnosed when I was 6. Oh. So around there.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Did she do any treatment do you remember?
Yeah. So in her case, that's a good question too. She, this was in the 80s, and she essentially found out that she had cancer because she found a lump And by the time they realized what it was already pretty much stage 3, 4. So there weren't a lot of options, and of course chemotherapy was available then, but it wasn't really. There were lots of different kinds of chemo and lots of treatment options now that they didn't have then. And in her case, it really wouldn't have done anything. It wouldn't have made a difference. At that point, it was really just comfort, comfort care. And she didn't want anything really aggressive because I think she realized that she would have just been miserable for the time she had left. And so the treatment options that she went for, she did a colonic routine. She became very spiritual. I remember she really became interested in Hinduism and just connecting with family and friends. And like myself, she was a musician, and she wrote songs for the people she loved. And those were wonderful things to have.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let me ask you real quick. Who was the first person that you told when you found out about your news?
The first person, I can't remember if it was my ex-husband or my father, but they were the first two that I did speak to. I just don't remember in what order I let them know.
Okay. How did your family handle the news?
Well, my father, having gone through this,
right.
with his first wife, I think it was really, really traumatizing for him. And I think, brought up a lot of memories of the experience before. And so he just went on, protector mode, and he wanted to go to every appointment with me and help me find the best surgeon, the best doctors. And my father's a very intelligent academic person, and he sought out all the information of the most current treatments that he could and shared them with me. And, my stepmother, his wife, also was very involved, and they were just at my side going to appointments with me. And, it was fantastic. My ex-husband too, he was very, very concerned and very caring. And, he really took on a lot of the domestic chores, taking care of our kids and, the practical sides of things. And I also have, lots of wonderful friends that, a lot of people were really scared on my behalf. And I think on one side, they wanted to protect me and not show how scared they were. And then on the other side, just, showing me their support and offering help. But, I'm sure Angela will talk about this a bit too. It's hard to really know as a loved one, what practical ways you can really help somebody who has this kind of life-threatening illness, that you want to offer the support. And this is what I saw with, my loved ones, but weren't really sure what to say or what to offer. To say, if there's anything you need, please let me know. And then from my perspective, it was hard to say what I needed, in a practical sense. It's really hard to know what to ask for.
Yeah, that is so true. So true. Sweet.
Were there ever any stages of denial?
Meaning that I didn't believe that I really was ill?
Yes.
No, no. That's interesting. That's an interesting question because, I think, like I said, I kind of knew it was a very high likelihood that I would experience it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, then talk to me real quick about some of the treatment. What were some of the decisions that were decided?
Well,
in your case,
the first diagnosis where it was considered stage 0. The first doctor that I spoke to just recommended you should just have a double mastectomy. You'll never have kids again. She was just very, very conservative about the treatment suggestion she made. And then I went to at the time I was considering having more kids. And I remember that was the thing that was really hard for me to, to digest. I didn't ultimately decide to, but I think having that option taken away was scary. and upsetting. But the second doctor I went to had a lot more. He had more suggestions, and there was more variation on the outcomes than the original doctor. And I ended up going to that second doctor. And so, as far as treatment goes, I opted to have surgery to just remove that, that stage 0 cancer. They were called calcifications. They look like little rice-sized, items that are floating around in there.
And they found that on the mammogram?
Yes, they found it. So in my case, I had to have a mammogram and an ultrasound to really target it because I have what's called dense breast tissue. And I think that's fairly common, that there's a lot going on in there that you can't really see with just a mammogram. But they're just incredible. I mean, I give them, the Dyson Center and the imaging, the Women's Breast Imaging Center here, just so much credit because they were really diligent and they were the ones who found it for me and, saved my life. So it started with surgery, and I think it was a couple of months later, the radiation, and then the pills. The pill was called tamoxifen at the time. That was the first one. And the second one, I think, surgery, but a double mastectomy, right, which is a lot more of a serious surgery. Yeah. Right.
Well, was there anything in particular that that you may have wished that you knew before you started treatment, or were you well prepared and knew what to expect?
Well, I'm somebody who's very curious and I ask a lot of questions, so I did feel like I knew what all my options were. Okay. I had all the information, so I can't say that there was anything I felt was left out.
Do you have any suggestions to people, maybe that involve certain treatment, or what would you suggest?
I have a lot of recommendations that probably would take a lot more time than we have. But if I could just make one suggestion for everybody, that early detection is really key. So going for regular checkups, regular mammograms, annual mammograms, and actually there is a second recommendation I would make, and that's genetic testing. That especially if it's something that cancer runs in the family, to go and get genetic testing done. And there are so many markers that can, be assessed for. And if I think, I really truly believe that knowledge is power. And if you know, okay, I have a high risk of this kind of cancer, then to go more often to get checked. And it's a very simple process. It's a saliva, you give them a sample of saliva and they send it into the lab and they can find all the genetic markers. And in my case, I have, some markers, some, things that are wrong. So I know there's certain cancers I need to screen for. So those would be my top recommendations.
Right on.
But as far as treatment goes, if there was somebody who was newly diagnosed and facing some kind of treatment, either chemo, radiation, or surgery, there would be more specific recommendations I would make for sure.
Okay. What has been your biggest self-discovery after you were diagnosed? If you have one.
That's I might have to give that some thought. I think the first thing that jumps to mind is how beneficial humor is, to be able to get through a challenge like that. As I mentioned, I'm a musician, and so one of the ways that I coped and I was able to find some laughter and in the experience was to write some songs about what I went through. I think, Josh, I sent you a couple samples.
Yes, we actually will. We are going to talk about those in a little bit. So then let me just ask you then real quick. How are you feeling on a daily, physically?
I would say for the last 2 weeks, I've been feeling pretty much like I did before all this happened 6 months ago, this most recent diagnosis, I've been feeling pretty good.
Good.
My energy's coming back and my hair's starting to grow back, which is really exciting.
Nice.
Yeah.
Is there a certain routine or schedule that needs to be followed, whether it be daily, weekly, what have you?
Well, at this point, I'm taking a daily pill that is will stop estrogen production, and then every month I get an injection. It's called Lupron. It's called Lupron is the drug, and the two of them combined both stop the production of estrogen and also stop it from getting to the cells that would multiply and become cancer in the future. But yeah, that's the only daily thing I do, and other than that, there are surgeries ahead and lots of doctor's appointments ongoing.
Not fun.
Yeah.
So, when people get diagnosed with an illness, right? They are often treated, sometimes differently amongst their peers. Have you experienced any of this? Or has it been more of like an outpour of care? And I mean, you mentioned you have a very strong supportive system.
Yeah.
But I mean, maybe even in not people that you're super close with, but maybe people that you might work with or whatnot. Has anyone treated you a little different because of the illness?
I guess, yeah, that is true to some extent. I know, I work for hospice, and I work with people who are terminally ill, and many of them do have cancer. And some of them I've been working with for a very long time, and the family members really are very protective of me. And so if anybody in the house is not feeling well, they, say, "Oh no, Elisa, we don't want you to come. We don't want to get you sick. We know how much you're going through," which is really sweet. And, I really like to emphasize that it's, the important thing is to focus on the patients, but I also do really appreciate the concern for me. I don't tend to really advertise my illness, to people that I don't know. For the most part, I don't. I don't do social media, so I'm not, posting anything. A lot of people don't know what I'm going through. I'm sort of a private person.
I mean, that's better though, right? I mean, to keep it more close knit, right? Not necessarily having
more authentic.
Right.
Yeah. Social media is just social media.
Yeah, I think it's a very personal choice though, because I think that is, in a way, this is my perception of social media, that it is a way that people get that support if they don't have it elsewhere to say, I'm going through this difficult time, and then get these responses that are supportive. In my case, I don't feel like that's necessary. I just have, such incredible support. I don't really feel like I'm lacking in that area at all.
No, that's good for you, because I mean the whole social media game too. I mean, as authentic and as caring and what have you. Like if you had put stuff up there and out there about your whole journey, a lot of people may relate and enjoy, but just with everything, you're gonna have a lot of
Jerks.
excess, negativity that you don't really even want to think about or be involved with. There people are always going to hate and talk shit. We've seen it a bunch of times when people go through certain situations and whatnot and do use their social media platforms like that. A lot of the negative could be, or that's brought up is it could be attention seeking. You're just trying, and it's different levels and whatnot. But either way, my advice to you to keep doing what you're doing, because stay away from the whole social media thing. But we're gonna take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll continue to hear from Elisa, and we'll hear from Angela on how breast cancer affected a male in her family tree. So make sure you come back with us right here on the It's All Relative podcast.
Boom in the game now, shit's insane now. Explode next mode, I'm the same how. Don't say you know me, just say you did. When you see me sliding off to another crib, boom, in the game now. I'm the same how. The rap game will never be the same now. Don't say you know me, just say you did. When you hear Y.O., say that's that shit.
Welcome back to It's All Relative. Still with me in studio, Elisa Parker and Angela Galente. So, Elisa, the journey that you went through, emotionally, mentally, all difficult, correct?
I wouldn't say all difficult.
Okay.
Certainly difficult. There's certain aspects that were difficult, but I think the amount of control I had over the decisions that were made really made it much more manageable, I think, than it could have been otherwise.
Okay. You did earlier mention a few songs that you had written, and you did share them with me, and I listened to them, and they were nice. I wanted to talk. You do have a very lovely voice.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Can I assume? I don't want to assume anything, but can I say though that these were some tools that you used to help through your journey?
Oh yes, absolutely. They made a huge difference for me.
Okay, so one of the songs is called "Reconstructive Surgery at a Discount," correct?
Yes.
And the second is called "Wig Obsessed." When I listened to these songs, I did pick up on a slight sense of humor. Is it okay? I mean,
I'm glad it came across that way.
Okay, I mean, yeah. If it wasn't intended to be like that, tell me. You know what I'm saying?
Because, it was. Yes.
Okay, because like I said, they were nice, and just talk to us about the whole your whole process of writing these, what they meant to you.
Okay. Well, these are two of several that I wrote, and I wrote each song at a different stage in the process of just going through this experience. So the first one that you referenced, the one about reconstructive surgery at a discount, the inspiration for that song was following my first meeting with the plastic surgeon. And my boyfriend and I drove to Connecticut. And I think we had this idea that we were going to go and she was going to explain what would happen and that I would go in for one surgery and then recover and be done in, a couple of months. But we quickly learned after speaking to this surgeon that we were looking at several months. And at this point, it's now looking like more than a year, maybe a year and a half, going through all of the steps. So the first step involved, I should say, the mastectomy, but then the plastic surgeon works along with the breast surgeon and inserts what's called tissue expanders. So they're like these thick bags full of fluid that's what I currently have, that sort of are like space holders that kind of like keep everything, keep the shape,
Mm-hmm.
And then, now that everything's healed, and next month, what she will do is she'll come back and then take tissue from my stomach and, structure it and put it on my chest and take the tissue expanders out. So it's a very involved process. And, the recovery is significant, and it does mean there are a lot of things I won't be able to do and I wasn't able to do with that first surgery. So I think, we came away from that. And the first thing I think my boyfriend said to me is, where can we get a drink? Because it was just a very...
One of those days.
One of those days.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very dramatic. It was a lot more than we were expecting. I guess it took us by surprise. So the drive back from Connecticut to come back home from that first meeting, I think we were just, processing it rather, and trying to figure out, how we're going to make it work. And we passed by a feed store, just one of those farm stores that had grain and things like that. And at that point, we had been talking about the cost, the financial cost of reconstructive surgery. It's certainly very expensive. The surgery itself is, luckily for me, covered by my insurance. But the time away from work, there are other expenses. The cost of wigs, let me tell you, is expensive. All of this.
What is an average cost?
Well, the one I'm currently wearing is $25, which is pretty good, pretty decent. That said, it's not a very high quality wig. And so even with the best care, they do wear out, and they look pretty terrible after a fairly short period of time. So there are more expensive wigs that I think insurance covers. In my case, I think covered one, which I ended up not liking very quickly. But in any case, that's just one of many, sort of hidden expenses that you don't really hear about or know about until you go through the process yourself.
Right.
So anyway, the whole idea of this high cost, the financial cost, the emotional cost, like you referenced, it was something that we were thinking about. And when we went by this feed store, we started making jokes about, well, let's say that instead of, the tissue expanders, we could just, throw in some grain or, throw in some oats or whatever it was. And then we got, creative and talked about, well, what about if it was whipped cream or, the grocery store has a discount on this, that, or the other thing. So that's really what inspired this song.
Wine.
Yeah, some wine. Yeah. And we also started joking about the fact that, this would be, a great way to be the, the most honored guest at a party or barbecue or something like that, because you could, impress everybody or serve everybody.
Very creative.
So thank you. So that was the inspiration for that song. And yeah, I think it came out fairly well. And yes, I did try to make it comical. And that's most of the songs I write for myself. I attempt to put an element of humor in it for myself, because I find that very healing, but also for other people. I do hope that, I have this idea in my head that I might, turn this creative process into a one-woman show one day. But, that's just still in my head. And then the other song that I sent to you, the reason I sent it to you is because I had a lot more trouble making that funny. I think, the most emotionally challenging part of this whole process was losing my hair. And I think a big part of that is that I didn't realize how much of my identity was tied with my hair. That, losing my breasts with the mastectomy was one thing. That's something that sets me apart. It makes me feminine and that whatnot. But my hair, I've had long hair for a long time, and to suddenly be bald and also not to have eyebrows or eyelashes, really, when I looked in the mirror, I saw someone who was ill. And granted, it wasn't the result of the illness, it was the result of the treatment that I lost my hair.
Right.
Yes.
You lose your eyebrows and your eyelashes as well?
Yeah. Hair everywhere.
So my cousin had colon cancer, and she was telling me before she passed that the only medication that makes you lose your hair is for the breast cancer. Do you know if that's true? If there's any truth to that?
Well, so certain chemotherapies do cause you to lose your hair. It's not the same for everyone, too. It really, that's part of what makes this very individualized. That although I could tell you my story, I'm not going to say that it's going to be the same for everybody.
Yeah.
I know that there are some people who lose their hair and it doesn't grow back, with the treatment that I had. And I had some real fear of that, because I think that the treatment is really... in my case, and I think probably for other people, I'm guessing, it really forces you to have somewhat of an identity crisis, because you have this external, representation of yourself that everybody sees and recognizes as you.
Right.
You are the same person, the same soul, regardless of how you appear. But but I guess I didn't realize how much of my physical appearance was what I recognized as being me until I lost it, you know.
It's hard.
Yeah. So yeah, it's been challenging. I mean, I know life is full of challenges, but that for me was the biggest challenge of all of this, that I could withstand the pain and the nausea and the, you know, unpleasantness and missing work and all of that. Although none of those things were good, were fun, but losing my hair was really, really tough. So when I I wanted to write a song about wigs, because I realized that it was my coping strategy to buy wigs and to try and recapture the image of what I recognized as myself. And, you know, some wigs I think do make me look more like how I see myself. And some really don't come close to that, or they're so uncomfortable I can't tolerate wearing them for a day, you know, or even for a short time. So I started writing it, and it became a really dark song initially. Mm-hmm. The version I sent you is not my first draft. But initially it ended up being the very first song I wrote that was depressing, that reflected the, you know, the pain and the emotional pain really of all of it. But then I did try to interject a little bit of comedy, because I thought, well, one way to look at this is that I have the opportunity to have a different identity depending on what wig I'm wearing and what mood I'm in. And so the chorus is essentially, you know, if I'm in this kind of mood, I can have this kind of wig, or I can have this kind of appearance. And so that in a way, that was my way of interjecting humor in it. Other than that, I don't know that it's the happiest song I've written or the funniest. So yeah, that's
what stood out to me too.
Yeah.
When I listened to that song, was what you had mentioned, the part about the ability to, you know, change, you know, whatever mood you're feeling.
Right.
But I mean, I can understand. I mean, I can't imagine. I can't relate. And I mean, as shitty as this may sound, just like at me, just as a male, like, to, you know, the fear that I would have, you know, like if I had to lose my hair now, I can't even really imagine being in somebody else's shoes or your shoes, being a female and having to be told that or having to go through that. So, you know, it's very courageous, you know what I'm saying, that to be able to, like you said, like when you look at yourself, it's different, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, I will say the wig that you're wearing right now looks good.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I've been surprised how many people will see me wearing, you know, one of my many wigs and say, "Oh, I really like your hair color. You know, who did your hair?" or something like that. And
yeah, that's cool.
I go through, you know, I go back and forth between wanting to whisper, "It's a wig," or or let them know, you know, or just say, "Oh, thank you," and move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So. Like, you can have it too for $25.95.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, when breast cancer is mentioned, most people think of women, but breast cancer certainly affects men as well. And according to the American Cancer Society, more than 2,700 men are diagnosed with breast cancer yearly, and approximately 530 die from the disease. Now, Angela, you have a male family member who was diagnosed with breast cancer, correct?
Yes, my mother's brother was diagnosed like 5-6 years ago. Yep, he found a lump and went to the doctor. So it's got to be a lot easier to find them, I would think. You know, men having smaller breasts.
Mm-hmm.
So he noticed it, you know, early on. So he was able to get it removed. And go through some treatment, and he's in remission. So definitely something.
What kind of treatment did he go through?
He went through chemo, radiation. That's all I know. I don't know a lot about it. And he had his lymph node and his breast removed.
Did he face any similar things that Elisa felt with hair loss, or do you know?
Not that I'm aware of, but he's older, so he's in his 70s, and I think he was already balding at the time, so the hair loss was not as dramatic.
Right.
I would think.
How's he doing currently then?
He's in remission. He's doing
Okay.
good. Yeah. But it happens. So.
Right. Like I said, most people, when they hear about breast cancer, most people automatically just think of women and
Yeah.
don't think of men. But I mean, we're trying to shed some light and awareness to everybody about this. So, I mean, how can we bring more awareness and attention to this matter? I mean, it's obviously a meaningful topic. Excuse me. It's definitely life-changing. So it's essential that this is being talked about. So, I mean, Angela and Elisa, any suggestions on how we can help spread some more awareness to people? You guys got any thoughts?
Keep talking about it for sure.
Yeah. And I think I mentioned this before, but going to regular doctor's visits, annual checkups, and genetic testing is very empowering. If you know that you're somebody who is predisposed to not just breast cancer, but cancer of any kind, you can be given tools about how to screen for it and monitor over time.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, for me, like I said in the beginning, I wasn't too aware of this topic. So becoming more aware of the whole topic is understanding more about it. And in order for that to happen, I got to ask questions, right? As anyone should when it comes to health issues. But so let me ask the two of you, I mean, if Alyssa, I'm sure you may be more familiar. Is it always a lump? It's always no.
No, I don't think so.
No.
Lump, bruise, just any abnormality.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of that can't be seen or felt even. That's why imaging is so important. Because that you can detect things with imaging, mammograms, ultrasounds that can't be seen or felt. And in fact, that's a better thing to do, because then you're able to catch it before it becomes something that can't be managed, or is it stage 4?
Okay. What about size? Varies in size, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
You mean tumors or just cancers in general? Because they can be almost, just can't even be seen or felt. They can be extremely small, or they can be so far tucked in, like Angela was saying, because in her uncle's case, it was something that he was able to detect because he didn't have as much tissue there to hide it. In my case, it wasn't something that I could feel. Mm-hmm. I had no awareness that there was no pain, no bruising, because it was so far inside the skin. It can vary in size and be hidden. Mm-hmm.
Now, when it comes to breast cancer, is it always on the breast, or could the cancer, whatever, be somewhere else on the neck or clavicle?
I think it's in the lymph nodes. I think it can be in the lymph nodes and the breast ducts, right? Because there's so much.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Like I'm looking at you.
Well,
like,
yeah, no. Well, I guess
she would know better.
I mean, I'm
Like-
guessing. Well, I'm guessing in order.
There are different types of breast cancer, so I would assume that it attacks different parts of the breast. Would be my assumption.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of like maybe an amateur kind of answer, but I think if it's anywhere near around the breast, it's considered breast cancer, or if it's elsewhere, it's considered some other kind of cancer.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then some breast cancer can move to other parts of the body, and I don't know if it's vice versa or not.
Right. So you're talking about some metastasizing. In other words, the cancer spreads.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's why the early detection is so important, because what happens is in the early stages, it's contained, right? So yeah, my first diagnosis, it was called, zero, stage 0. And stage 1, it's still contained. It hasn't necessarily spread, or one hopes. But as you get to 3 and 4, there's, that indicates that the cancer has spread. And yeah, like you said, it can spread to other parts of the body. The same with other kinds of cancers. What you want is to catch it while it's still contained and not affecting other parts of the body.
Okay. Now, one thing that I learned just from being here today was that you said that your genes play a big role into this. Now, let me ask you, does your ethnicity play a role in breast cancer?
It can.
Okay.
So, people who have Ashkenazi Jewish, heritage, do have a tendency to be, have higher risks, and so that applies to me.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean that's something that I'm always asked every time I go to the doctor. That, are you Ashkenazi Jew? And I say yes, and then they'll nod their heads and say, oh, okay. But also, yeah, having family members who have had cancer diagnoses in the past, that indicates that there may be some kind of a genetic connection. But that said, those aren't the only ways in which someone might be at risk. There are environmental components, environmental risks. Yeah, I mean, there are lots that we still don't know. From my understanding, I'm not an expert in this area at all. I just went through it myself, so I'm not going to,
right.
Speak as if I know everything about how one gets cancer. But, we have a lot of toxins in our environments and the things that we eat and, the air we breathe. And so my understanding is that we don't know exactly sometimes why someone would get, a cancer diagnosis while someone else might not.
Yeah, I'm a true believer that I believe that is a lot of why people and animals specifically, get cancer. There's all of the stuff we're putting on our lawns and in our food and in our shampoo, everything. It's just, I can go on for days on that one.
Right.
Scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's quite obvious, but the general opinion should be to get checked often then? Because, I mean, one of the questions I had was how often should you get checked? But you said often, right? Or as often as possible?
Well, I think that it really does come down to like those factors that I mentioned before. Like if you have, genetic predisposition for certain cancers, it might be recommended that you go more often. I know that there are sort of age recommendations. I think, when we're talking about breast cancer, I think that the age has changed over time, but it used to be, if you're 40 years old and up, then it's recommended that you go for, every year for a mammogram, or maybe it was 45. I'm not sure where they stand right now, just as a general rule. But yeah, if you have some risk factors in your family, or in your genetics, you might want to start earlier and more frequently. But yeah, again, that's really a conversation for each person and their doctors.
I know that I turned 44 this year, and I had a doctor appointment, and this was the very first time that they recommended it to me. And I was indecisive, but I will say that I think I'm going to go for it.
Good for you.
Today, so
Yeah.
thank you for that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I mean, I understand it's scary. No one likes to go to the doctor,
Yeah.
right?
The mammogram scares me. I don't know.
Well,
I don't know. I've only heard stories.
Yeah. Well, again, it's very individualized. I think what's even scarier is having a cancer diagnosis that's unchecked. Mm-hmm. So if I were to give my opinion, I would say that it's better to know and be able to address it earlier than to wait.
So I don't know what the actual age is, but this was the first my doctor brought it up. So
Yeah. So maybe 45 is the general recommendation. I don't know at this point.
Do either of you know, I'm sure you guys don't know like an exact number, but do either of you know like a ballpark figure of like how common or how many women usually, the percentage of women getting diagnosed with breast cancer is like every year, or increase, decrease? We don't know.
Pretty sure it increased.
If I had to guess, I would say there's an increase, but yeah, again, it's not something that I have actual numbers on right now.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to put you guys on the spot like that. I pretty much figured, but yeah, I was interested about that because I would assume that things are only getting worse, so it would only increase. But we are going to be wrapping it up soon. But Elisa, I want to ask you, is there anything that you would say or recommend to anyone who may or are going through a similar fight that you went through?
Well, okay, what I recommend is that it's important that everyone knows that they're in charge of their own journey, and that there's never going to be just one option. I think that really helped me, was to feel empowered that every medical decision I made was my decision, and that we are living in a time when there are a lot of treatment options. No one person can tell you how to move forward. But it's not necessarily a death sentence, even with a later stage. That's one thing I've learned too. I've seen people have, an advanced stage of cancer and still find a way through. And so having hope, I think, is really helpful. That was very helpful for me.
Nice. Well, Alyssa, I mean, your experience was unfortunate, but you and your story are inspirational. I hope that when this episode drops, that it will help and inspire someone, because your story is very relatable to many. And once again, it takes a lot of courage to talk about what you've been through. So thanks again for coming on It's All Relative and sharing your story.
Thanks for having me.
Always. Is there anyone or anything that you might want to plug or shout out?
Well, I think all of the medical professionals at the Dyson Center and the women's imaging and breast surgery deserve a lot of thanks, and they just do amazing work. And I really owe them a lot. And not just me. I see them helping people all the time. So I highly recommend them for anybody going through a similar experience.
Right on. You want to share any social media accounts in case any listeners want to contact you?
I don't really use social media, but I suppose if you contact Josh and he can get in touch with me, that would be the best way.
All right. Angela, social media accounts?
RandomMange78 and on Instagram. That's it.
All right. And you guys can always find me at Josh_Toth3. That's my Instagram. And my Facebook is Joshua Toth. Reminder, if you like what you've heard, please don't forget to subscribe or follow the show so you'll never miss an episode when they drop. And you can subscribe or follow It's All Relative on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, YouTube, and Google. And once again, please leave some reviews on the Apple page. It really helps the show out, and we need to get a few more reviews up on there. So if you guys like the show, follow the show, support the show, whatever, just show some love on that page. But big shout out to Stellar Sound and Media and our editor, Jackson Wallace. And, lastly, to anyone that's lost a loved one to cancer, our love and prayers are with you guys. So, all right, that's a wrap. Alyssa, thanks again.
Thank you, Josh.
All right, everyone, stay safe, stay kind, stay proud and powerful, and we'll see everyone next year. Peace.
Peace.